Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today reciters are Amok Prabhuji will be reciting in Sanskrit and Pooja Mataji will be reciting in English from Canto 3, Chapter 31, verses 1 to 16. So Amok Prabhuji, when you are ready, can you please start with invocation 3 times? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Madan.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 31, Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities. Kapila Uvacha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Karmana Daiva Netrena Jantuhu Deha Upapatkaye Striyaha Pravishtabadharam Pumso Retaha Kanashrayah.
Hare Krishna. Personality of Godhead says, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the results of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body.
Kalalam tu ekaratrena pancharatrena budbudam dasahena tu karkanduhu pesyandam va tataha param.
On the first night, the sperm and ovum mix, and on the fifth night, the mixture ferments into a bubble. On the 10th night, it develops into a form like a plum, and after that, it gradually turns into a lump of flesh or an egg, as the case may be.
मासेन तु शिरोद्भाभ्यां बाहु अङ्ग्रियाद्यङ्गविग्रहः नकलो मास्ति चर्माणि लिङ्गचिद्रुद्भवस्त्रिभिः.
In the course of a month, a head is formed, and at the end of 2 months, the hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, and skin appear, as do the organ of generation and the other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus.
चतुर्भिः दातवः सप्त पञ्चभिः क्षुत्रुद्भवः षड्भिर्जरायण वीतः कुक्षो भ्राम्यति दक्षिणे.
Within 4 months from the date of conception, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely child, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into existence. At the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt. At the end of 6 months, the fetus, enclosed by the amnion, begins to move on the right side of the abdomen.
मातुः जग्दन्नपानाद्यैः एतद्धातुः असम्मते ते ते विन्मूत्रयोर्घत्ते स जन्तुः जन्तुसम्भवे.
Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abominable residence of stool and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms.
कृमिभिः क्षत सर्वाङ्गः सौकोमार्यात् प्रतिक्षणं मूर्छामाप्नोति उरुक्लेशः तत्रत्यैः क्षुधितैः मुहुः.
Bitten again and again all over the body by the hungry worms in the abdomen itself, the child suffers terrible agony because of his tenderness. He thus becomes unconscious moment after moment because of the terrible condition.
कटुतीक्ष्णवुष्णलवणरूक्षाम्लादिभिः उल्बणैः मातृभुक्तैः उपस्पृष्टः सर्वाङ्गवुत्थितवेदनः.
Owing to the mother's eating bitter, pungent foodstuffs or food which is too salty or too sour, the body of the child incessantly suffers pains which are almost intolerable.
उल्बेन संवृतः तस्मिन् अन्ध्रैश्च बहिरावृतः आस्ते कृत्वा शिरः कुक्षौ भुग्नपृष्ठशिरोधरः.
Placed within the amnion and covered outside by the intestine, the child remains lying on the one side of the abdomen, his head turned towards his belly, and his back and neck arched like a bow.
अकल्पः स्वाङ्गचेष्टायां शकुन्त इव पञ्जरे तत्र लब्धस्मृतिर्दैवात् कर्म जन्म शतोद्भवम् स्मरन् दीर्घम् अनुच्वासं शर्म किं नाम विन्दते.
The child thus remains just like a bird in a cage without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition?
आरभ्य सप्तममासात् लब्धबोधोऽपि वेपितः नैकत्रास्ति सूचिवातैः विष्टाभोः इव सोदरः.
Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed towards by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal cavity, he cannot remain in one place.
नातमान ऋषिर्भीतः सप्तभद्रिः कृताञ्जलिः सुवीततं विक्लवया वाच येनोदरे अर्पितः.
The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition.
जन्तुर्वाच तस्योपसन्नमवितुं जगदिच्छयात्त नानातनुर्भुवि सोऽहं व्रजामि शरणं चिकुतो भयं मे येनेदृशि गतिर्दर्शि यसतोऽनुरूपा.
The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities.
यस्त्वत्र बद्ध इव कर्मभिः आवृतात्मा भूतेन्द्रियाशयमयीम् अवलम्ब्य मायाम् आस्ते विशुद्धम् अविकारमखण्डबोधम् आतप्तमानहृदये अवसितं नमामि.
I, the pure soul, appearing now bound by my activities, am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances.
यः पञ्चभूतरचिते रहितः शरीरे चन्नुऐतेन्द्रियगुणार्धचिदात्मकोऽहम् तेनाविकुण्ठमहिमानं ऋषिं तमेनं वन्दे परं प्रकृतिपुरुषयोः पुमांसम्.
I am separated from the Supreme Lord because of my being in this material body, which is made of 5 elements, and therefore my qualities and senses are being misused, although I am essentially spiritual. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to material nature and the living entities, because he is devoid of such a material body, and because he is always glorious in his spiritual activities, I offer my obeisances unto him.
यन्मायौरुगुणकर्मनिबन्धनेऽस्मिन् सांसारिके परिचरन् तदविश्रमेण नष्टस्मृतिः पुनरयं प्रवणीतलोकं युक्त्या कयमहदनुग्रहमन्तरेण.
The human soul further prays. The living entity is put under the influence of material nature and continues the hard struggle for existence on the path of repeated birth and death. This conditional life is due to his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, without the Lord's mercy, how can he again engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord? Hare Krishna. Thank you for giving me opportunity, Mataji.
श्लोक 16. ज्ञानं यद्येतद् अददात् कथमः सदेवः त्रैकालिकं स्थिरचरेषु अनुवर्तितांशः तं जीवकर्मपदवीमनुवर्तमानाः तापत्रयोपशमनाय वयं भजेम.
No one other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the localized Paramatma, the partial representation of the Lord, is directing all inanimate and animate objects. He is present in the three phases of time, past, present, and future. Therefore, the conditioned soul is engaged in different activities by his direction. And in order to get free from the threefold miseries of this conditioned life, we have to surrender unto him only.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Welcome to the chat class, and thank you so much, Pratibha Mataji and Prabhu, for your wonderful recitation. So today we are going to be doing Canto 3, chapter 31, and verses 10 to 13. And you did hear some of the meanings, and we are going to unpack what Lord Kapila says in these verses. So let's put our hands together for the invocation and then the Mangalacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakkaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sakana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahakana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नम ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पश्यता देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे हरे श्री प्रभुपाद की जय. Hare Krishna, everyone, once again. So this is the chat class, and we are doing Canto 3, and we are coming pretty much towards the end of Canto 3. We just have got another couple of chapters. This one is chapter 31, which is Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked probably a couple of classes before. How do you feel when you heard the translation being recited today? What are some of the things in your mind?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Tena Mataji.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhuji, this chapter in particular, very fascinating, lots to learn and understand. And at the same time, I would say it's quite scary, if that makes sense, to learn about what the soul goes through during its journey from a conception to the birth. And I found it particularly relevant because my daughter had a baby boy 7 weeks ago.
Oh, wonderful.
And so, I was just trying to fathom the process the baby would have gone through and what it would have endured being in mommy's tummy. And yes, then every time I look at his face, it just makes me think, what a precious gift it is from the Lord, for him to endure that journey and come out through at the other end so perfectly, with everything in its right place, and especially as well, where it says the baby is kind of formed after 3 months, and then from 5th and 6th months it starts to notice hunger, thirst, etc. So yes, just absolutely magical, miraculous. I don't know. I'm just so overwhelmed by this chapter, both kind of happily, but at the same time a little bit sorrow too, to learn what a soul goes through. If that makes sense. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Nena Mataji. I think you could not have, you have expressed it so beautifully. So this is a chapter, if we found the last chapter difficult, because, when we are looking at what happens, to sinful materialists who lead criminal activities and what really happens to them. So they take and the hellish things that happens after the time of death, when Yamadutta comes, is
Yes.
very, it's quite scary.
Scary,
And
yes.
and this one
Yes.
is even more so.
Yes. Yes.
And partly, Mataji, I was reflecting on this because one of them is around when we come to death. I mean, we experience probably birth more than death. And let me clarify that. So death is something that we see is coming, and we don't really know what's going to happen after that. But all of us have been born. So, Nena Mataji, you have been seeing, seeing your grandchild who would have gone through this in, your daughter's womb.
Yes.
All of us have been through this.
Yes.
And that makes it even more scary.
Yes, but at the same time, you don't understand what you have gone through.
Yeah.
You just accept it as one of those processes in life, birth, old age, etc. But I personally never understood it in depth at this level.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so surreal and so, like I said, a little bit, sorrowed as well to learn. Almost like I feel even more overjoyed looking at my grandson now, and I just every time I just look at it and think, wow, what have you endured to be here now? And we are so very, very blessed to have him in our lives. Truly a gift from God. The other thing I was thinking, Prabhuji, is that, they say that the soul enters the body of the baby in the mother's womb. And I've kind of heard various things whereby it can happen anytime during the pregnancy of 9 months of pregnancy. Is that true? Or is it from conception a soul has already decided to enter that particular mother's womb? When does the soul enter the body of the baby?
That's a good question, Mataji, and in fact the answer is already there, and we will when we do the summary of what we have just gone, we will see that, because Lord Kapila does say that, and we will come to that. So if you can just spark your
Okay.
question,
Sure,
it
sure.
doesn't it doesn't the soul doesn't come at the end of 9 months, because for the soul to even go through that particular process, it has to be right at the start.
All
So
right.
yeah, so it doesn't. It's not at a later stage, it happens right at the start, because otherwise, if
Yes.
there is no spark of life, then you can't really have an embryo, being created in the first place.
Ah, right. Okay. Yes, that of course makes sense, but it is yeah. No, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
And thank you so much for sharing. I think that's really, that makes this even more special. So, when we have this particular knowledge, and that's what we're going to unpack today. So, when we have this knowledge, which is not very, which not many of us really understand, because we probably know enough about death, but we don't really know what's going on in the womb. And
Yes.
this particular study this has been there since time immemorial. So. It also fascinates me to know how deeply, the Vedic scriptures, has that particular knowledge, and how that knowledge has, somehow be forgotten. And it has taken us so many years to really, just have this knowledge, because we experience birth all the time, we experience death all the time, but how well do we know that? And this chapter is a good example that we hardly know anything.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you,
Yeah,
Prabhuji.
thank you so much for the sharing that. So what we'll do is, before we move to, verses 10 to 13, which is what we're going to cover today, let's do a very quick synopsis. And Nena Mataji, thanks for a lot for doing a lot of that. Um, here's what Lord Kapila says. How does the soul, enter into the womb? And that happens through the particle of male semen, is what he, starts. So on the fifth night, there is a mixture that on that there's a bubble that is formed, and on the 10th night it develops into a form, and then it gradually becomes either a lump of flesh. And when it's a lump of flesh, it's all the mammals. It's like, human beings, because that's where the embryo really takes comes into effect. Or it's an egg, as in, like, in a case of a bird, where the chicken comes out of the egg, as an example. So in month one, let's quickly trace through what Nana Mataji just briefly mentioned. So in month one, a head is formed. At the end of 2 months, hands, feet, and other limbs are formed. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, skin appear. And then also there are perches on the body, like eyes, nostrils, etc. And within 4 months from the date of conception, the seven essential ingredients, which includes, blood, flesh, they come into existence. So you can see that there is a very gradual progression of all of this, and all of that has started off right from the start, when, the soul impregnates, the womb. And then it's only in month 5 that, you can actually start feeling your hunger and thirst. And at the end of 6 months, the fetus is, begins to move to the right side. So if you can think of, like what's happening in embryo, and also think of how the mothers react, and externally. So how many of us remember that, and Nana Mataji, you probably have, you have experienced this very, very closely. So it's probably on the 5th month that your daughter would suddenly have felt a lot more hungry, hunger and thirst, and eating more than you normally would, because the child is very hungry and very thirsty, and that's reflected in what the mother feels as well. So it's this beautiful bond that exists between, the child and the mother. And then what's very interesting is that, it's only from the 7th month that consciousness really starts, and that's what we're going to talk about in great detail. However, text 5 onwards is very difficult. I personally found it very difficult to read, because it really speaks about the condition in which the embryo is living, and it's very abominable. So, because it's abominable residence of stools and urine, and it's the breeding place of all kinds of worms, and And this is where your heart goes out, because the child suffers terrible agony, because the child is very, very tender, and and it becomes conscious moment after moment because of the terrible condition. However, there is also, when we come to child text 10, you're also going to see some positive aspect to this, and we will unpack that a little bit more. And in text 7, there is also this aspect of what the mother eats will also, like affect the child, and hence it's suggested that there are certain kind of foodstuffs that you avoid when you're during pregnancy, because it's not good for the mother, but it's even worse for the child, because the child is very, very tender at that point of time, and is unable to bear any kind of pain of any sort. And then and then the in text 8, Lord Kepler goes on to say that the child remains lying on one side. So you can see that it's a most uncomfortable position, because your head is turned towards the belly. So you can see, you would have seen the the photo of the embryo. You can see that it's a very, very tight, very it's like a prison that you're there for a lot of for almost like 9 months, and then it's like a bird in a cage. You don't have any freedom, and that's where there is something fortunate that happens, and that's when the child is gifted with the mercy of remembrance. And as the moment we come into this particular world, we completely forget everything that we know about our previous lifetimes, and that's also a blessing in disguise, because if we knew what we were in the last few births, then it's going to make our current life extremely complicated. And this is where he remembers the past 100 births. And can you imagine this tiny little embryo that is causing so much of an excitement in the outside world, in anticipation of this, like this child coming out, and then the mother and the parents and the grandparents, everyone so much looking forward to that particular event. Can you see what's happening inside? Um, and and when a child is like remembering 100 birds, it will obviously remember all the positive things that they have done, all the kind acts, all the evil acts, and it's going to be very difficult for the child to really have any peace of mind at that point of time. And hence it's some of it could rub off on the mother as well, because when a child whom she's protecting and is feeling so distressed, then some of the distress could pass on to the mother as well. So how can you really expect a child to have complete peace of mind? So that's where we leave off, and where Prabhupada mentioned in the purport of text 9 is that if we do not use this opportunity to understand like what really happens during birth, then what we are doing is we are doing nothing but commit a spiritual suicide. And the verses that we're going to talk about are really how do you avoid that spiritual suicide. So let's move on to text 10, and I'll start sharing my screen. So I will read the Sanskrit, and then I'll request volunteers to read the translation of the purport. आरभ्य सप्तमान्मासात् लब्धबोधोऽपि वेपितः नैकत्रास्ते सुतीवातै विष्टा भूरिव सोदरः. So, is there any devotee who would like to read the translation and the purport, please?
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, Mataji.
Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed downwards by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worm born of the same filthy abdominal cavity, he cannot remain in one place. Purport. At the end of the 7th month, the child is moved by the bodily airs and does not remain in the same place, for the entire uterine system becomes slackened before delivery. The worms have been described here as Sodara. Sodara means born of the same mother. Since the child is born from the womb of the mother, and the worms are also born of fermentation within the womb of the same mother, under circumstances the child and the worms are actually brothers. We are very anxious to establish universal brotherhood among human beings. But we should also take into consideration that even the worms are our brothers. What to speak of other living entities? Therefore, we should be concerned about all living entities. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Thank you, Pratibha Mataji. So, this particular verse and Prabhupada's purport it tells us something which we probably would not have known, or we may have known, but it's very much in the subconscious. So, from the seventh month is when the development of consciousness really happens. And this is a time when you could look at developing a stronger material consciousness or developing a more spiritual consciousness. And as we understand, like how the embryo goes through all these cycles, we can also try to think about what is it that we can do to help the child even before it comes out into this world. So when the child is developing a consciousness, what can be a better way for the child to develop a higher level of consciousness than to play the Maha Mantra, play the Kirtan all the time, like listen to the Bhagavad Gita, listen to classes, listen to Krishna's pastimes. So the child is listening. The child is listening, and because it's like its senses are like getting developed, and now it is able to use its senses to be able to make sense of its current situation and where it is. So how powerful it is. I mean, we keep hearing about, like we should always listen to something very positive, something very meditative, very peaceful. And what a better way to really, help a child to come into this world than, getting that, like listening to the Maha Mantra all the time and listening to the Lord's name. And you know about Abhimanyu, how he became a pure devotee, by listening. Even Prahlad Maharaj, we have lots of examples where because of the surroundings, because of the situation that has been created in this material world, you create a spiritual bubble, and then your child blossoms. And when the child's consciousness grows, it gets it grows more towards Krishna consciousness than towards material consciousness. Something just to be aware of as we look at this entire aspect of birth, because it's important to understand birth, but it's also important to look at now that we understand birth, and now that we understand that the embryo goes through this very structured process in month one, month two. What is it that we can do in a way to you know um, demonstrate our love, demonstrate our care to this soul that is coming into this particular world? So at the end of the seventh month, I mean, so that's where the development of consciousness happens. Then the child is tossed on by the airs, because there is a very natural process that when the child becomes ready for delivery, it has to move down the uterus. So it so you can see that the child is constantly moving, so it's not very still at that point of time. And that's why you can also the mother can feel the child kicking, because clearly like it's moving a lot, and a lot of that is happening because of the bodily air. And here there is something very interesting. The worms, which cohabits this abominable residence, has been described as Sodara. Sodara is, my brother. So it's all born of the same mother. So since the child is born from the womb of the mother, and even the worms are born, from the within the womb. So we are actually brothers. The child and the worms are brothers. But if we were to tell that in our material life to anyone, how would they react to something like this? So, we have this thing about, the human, being, like the pinnacle of, civilization, the pinnacle of, progress, when it comes to, has got the highest intelligence, got the highest talents, can, send, like mission to space, etc., etc. So we can do all those wonderful things. But at the end of the day, we, do not really then we dissociate ourselves, and we lose the connection with the other living entities. And here something which happens right at birth. So our brothers are the worms that inhabit and that in the same womb. And we are trying to think about, so Prabhupada says here that we are trying to look at universal brotherhood, although that's happening less these days because people are really trying to see more how different we are rather than thinking about how similar we are. So that's why all this conflict is going on, all these artificial boundaries, that we have set for ourselves, country limits, geographical limits, and immigration process. What if we really were to not have any of those boundaries? If we're not worried about asylum seekers, and we're not worried about like illegal immigrants coming our way. So if it's really a free reign to everyone, imagine how that would be. So while we do look at universal, we try to establish universal brotherhood, but then we do it in a very half-hearted manner. We do it only in a way that benefits us rather than benefiting everyone else who's involved. So something for us to keep in mind. So and that's where Prabhupada says that we should be concerned about all living entities. So if you were to look at the Bhagavad Gita, like what does Krishna say? That a learned sage is someone who sees everyone equally, whether it's a Brahmin, learned Brahmin, whether it's a dog eater, elephant, cow. So that is a spiritual vision with which any devotee, any pure devotee would see the world. So for them, that is really no one is different. Everybody is part and parcel of Krishna, and everyone, and there is a connection, that really brings us together. So that's what this purport, and this passage really, this verse really says. Any questions or any reflections before we move to the next one? Text 11. नातमान ऋषिर्भीतः सप्तवग्नि कृताञ्जलिः स्तुभित तं विक्लक्य वाचायेनोदरेर्पितः. Would somebody like to read the translation purport?
Can I read
Yes,
it, Prabhuji?
Shri Mataji.
Hare Krishna. The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is said that when a woman is having labor pains, she promises that she will never again become pregnant and suffer from such a severely painful condition. Similarly, when one is undergoing some surgical operation, he promises that he will never again act in such a way as to become diseased and have to undergo medical surgery, or when one falls into danger, he promises that he will never again make the same mistake. Similarly, the living entity, when put into a hellish condition of life, prays to the Lord that he will never again commit sinful activities and have to be put into the womb for repeated births and death. In the hellish condition within the womb, the living entity is very much afraid of being born again. But when he is out of the womb, when he is in full life and good health, he forgets everything and commits again and again the same sins for which he was put into that horrible condition of existence. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Supra Mataji. So I had a question before we go to this. So does anyone know about Bhakti bridges? Or have you heard this particular term, Bhakti bridges?
No, Prabhuji, I have not.
Okay. So Bhakti Bridges is one of the is a new curriculum that's been developed by Kesha Swami Maharaj and Kripamai Prabhu, and about a couple of years ago there was there was a study done of the various sanghas that were happening in the manner. And while there were opportunities for the devotees to really come together, there was a need felt that could we really standardize the curriculum of what is being like shared, and also enable the sangha leaders to have materials that they could use to have spiritual discussions. And those are based on Prabhupada's books, the Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and many of his books. So then over the last 2 or 3 years, Kripamoy Prabhu and Kesha Maharaj, had developed this curriculum together. So, and that's called Bhakti Bridges. And many of the Manor Sangha either have already transitioned or they are transitioning to Bhakti Bridges. Now, why I'm asking, why I'm sharing that is the first one, the first. Could you take a wild guess? I mean, I understand it may not be very easy if you haven't really heard, if you don't know about the Bhakti Bridges. What do you think would be the first topic that may have been covered in Bhakti Bridges?
Who am I?
Who am I? Yes, Mataji. I mean, okay, so we do come to that stay at a certain stage in our spiritual like path, but not quite.
Maybe bhakti? Devotional service?
Bhakti, yes, but bhakti is probably not very easy to understand when when you're starting your journey.
Yes.
The suffering.
Suffering, Mataji, yes, Usha Mataji. So thank you so much for that. So indeed, and I know Hitesh Prabhu, you also had something to say. I saw that you had also unmuted yourself.
Hare Krishna. I was just going to say, possibly, what is the Bhagavad Gita? But we've obviously got to the point where we've got an answer. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. So Ushamataji is right. So it's really about suffering, and of course, there is a reason to it. So today, we're looking at this example of birth, and what we have been seeing in this particular chapter so far is what are the pains, what is the suffering that's associated with birth, and why it's important for us to know that is because we do need to know that this world is not necessarily the best of places. It may offer a lot of pleasures. It may offer a lot of joys that we have. It could be like the birth of your son, the birth of your of your grandchild, which are very special moments. And how do we really understand that in the context of who we are as a person? And that's where Yashmi Mataji, you're right. I mean, it's really about also like asking yourself at some point, who am I? How the key thing is, unless you really know that you're suffering, you don't really make those choices that allows you to elevate your consciousness. And that's what that's why the Bhakti Bridges and that must have been also the reason why both Kesha Swami Maharaj and Kripa Prabhu felt that the first topic in the Bhakti Bridges, which is going to be a 64-week curriculum, begins with something as seemingly negative as suffering. So, but of course, whether it's negative or positive is really it really depends on us. So now let's move back to that, and I will quickly just speak about this passage. So suffering is something that is really the starting. So the moment we know that this world is a dukkha, that's when we start actually really asking life's more deeper questions. It's not about what am I going to do, what am I going to cook tomorrow. It's not going to be about what are the job what are the various activities I need to do at work tomorrow. Those are of course things that you need to do your prescribed duties, but what you are doing through the elevated consciousness is to really ask yourself, what is birth? How does it really how does the embryo, what is it that the embryo is going through? And here you're finding that when we go through pain, our typical response is that, or when we go through suffering, our typical response is that we'll go to, we'll go and approach the Lord, and we'll tell, "Oh, we're not going to do this again. I'm never going to become," for example, here, the woman who's having labor pains, she promises that she'll never again become pregnant. But that's not always the case, because we do know mothers who have more than one child. And so the question you ask yourself is that why would you want to go through that entire, pain of 9 months? That's because you're looking forward to that in that joyful moment when you bring a child into the world. So, and that's very similar to how we're all doing. So, and I can think of my uncle. So he is he's he suffers from diabetes, and and it's been a condition that he has been having for quite a, I mean, I would say quite a long time, for a number of years. And there are two ways to do this. One is you kind of restrain yourself, maneuver, you change your life choices to say that I'm not going to have much sweet, or I'm going to eat at regular points of time, etc. However, I do see this uncle of mine, being very childish, almost childish in that sense. So, he would continue to have sweets. He would be an absolute, like nightmare to my aunt. And sometimes, we, just wonder who's really the child here. So, and that's again, that again points to the fact that we always like to believe that, we will not make the same mistake again. And yet we keep doing that again and again. And similarly, what happens is, like the living entities, we have been through this hellish condition of life for we don't know how many years. We saw in the last chapter about what happens when someone who's a materialist, who performs sinful activities, what's the kind of experiences they go through after death, before they come into the womb of a mother. So and in spite of doing that, we would we still pray to the Lord. And yet what happens is that when he's out of the womb, when he's in full life and good health, he forgets everything. And this forgetfulness is our greatest misery. And this is our greatest misery, because till we are in the womb, we at least are, we understand our situation, we understand our constitutional position, and then we appeal to the Lord. But then when we are out of the womb, and when we are in full life, when we are in good health, when we have all the blessings, we really forget, we don't even thank, like the Lord, and we keep again making the same mistake and some sense again and again. And so you're getting back to this. So the question is, when we forget, and we know that the forgetfulness comes because of Maya, because the moment you come into this world, while you are in the mother's womb, you are very protected, and you're protected from Maya. And but the moment you come out of it, the Lord's inferior energy is going to be so powerful that you're going to forget everything, and you again, like keep repeating the same sins again and again. And when we know this, what is it that we need to do is the question that we need to ask. So with this knowledge, with this propensity that we have about, being about getting into that mode of committing sin again and again, what is it that I can do to really help me to eternally, or to completely, get rid of this cycle of birth and death? Something for us to just remember, something for us to know. And we will move on to the next text. And then, of course, we can have some discussions at the end. Jantra uvacha tasyopasannamavitum jagadichyat nanatanor chalaccharanarvindam soham rajami sharadam hyakuto bhayam me yene drushi gatiradarshya sato nurupa. Could we have a volunteer to read?
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Usha Mataji, please go ahead.
Translation. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walk on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only, because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I receive the condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. Purport. The word Chalashanarvindam refers to the personality of Godhead, who actually walks to travel upon the surface of the world. For example, Lord Ramchandra actually walked on the surface of the world, and Lord Krishna also walked just like an ordinary man. The prayer is therefore offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who descends to the surface of this earth or any part of this universe for the protection of the pious and the destruction of the impious. It is comforted in Bhagavad Gita that when there is an increase of irreligion and discrepancy arise in the real religious activities, the Supreme Lord comes to protect the pious and kill the impious. This was indicate Lord Krishna. Another significant point in this verse is that the Lord comes Ichaya by his own will, as Krishna confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavaya Atma Mayaya. I appear at my will by my internal potency. He is not forced to come by the law of material nature. It is stated here Ichaya. He does not assume any form, as the impersonality thinks, because he comes at his own will and the form in which he descends in his eternal form. As the Supreme Lord puts the living entity into the condition of horrible existence, he can also deliver him, and therefore one should seek shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna demands, give up everything and surrender unto me. And it is also said in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who approaches him does not come back again to accept a form in the material existence, but goes back to Godhead, back home, never to return. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Now, can you see how things are getting to be more positive, because we are seeing a solution to the to the existential problem here. And Prabhupada's purport is very, very significant in this one, in this particular verse, because he draws upon a lot of very important messages from the Gita. So let's see. So this is where so we are still around the 7th or the 8th month, and this is where the human soul develops, their consciousness. They remember. It remembers, like its previous, 100 lifetimes. It acknowledges its position, and it clearly knows that the material world is not where I really want to be. And what we do at this point of time, the embryo does, is to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you can see that this is happening even before you come into the world itself. And what this also means that when a human soul does this, it doesn't really matter it doesn't really matter which nation you're born. It doesn't really matter which country you're born. You could end up, like being born as a UK British national, or or an Indian or an American. But all those are, just, like labels that that are very artificially put because of the way we have divided ourselves. And I have stopped feeling that sense of universal brotherhood. But the fundamental, the most important one is really about having the connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that every soul has in the embryo. When you come out, you forget all of that, and you become completely different, and you are more conditioned by what by your upbringing, which comes through your parents, through the through the environment that you live in, etc. So here, what the prayer of the human soul is, that I so here the human soul is addressing the supreme personality of Godhead, in his incarnations, in his when he comes to this particular planet. And that's also quite significant, because then it also means that the human soul recognizes the connection either as Lord Ramchandra or as Lord Krishna. So here, as Prabhupada says, this verse indicates that the human soul prays to Krishna. And then I take shelter of him only, because only he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is also befitting my impulse activities. So Krishna is impartial. So he doesn't, he has the ability to give you relief from your fear. At the same time, he also, will make things, like work in the material universe that will also be befitting your impulse activities. And hence, as someone who's got a human body, our endeavor should always be around how we can reduce our impulse activities, so that our condition of life is much more pleasant, much more peaceful than the hellish that we have seen in the last chapter. So here there are two words that are important, that Prabhupada says is very important. One is Chala Charana Ravindam. And this is about the Lord walking or traveling on the surface of the earth. So and this is where Prabhupada also refers to that famous verse Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. And what he also says, that it's offered to the Lord in the form of his incarnation, who is when he comes to this earth, and he protects the pious and destroys the impious. So and so that's whom the human soul really prays while still in the womb. And then another significant point in this verse is Ichaya. So um, the Lord doesn't come because he's being forced to. He comes by his own will, and he does not assume any form, and he's beyond, he's transcendental. So his body is eternal, his leela is eternal, so he is not dictated by any of the laws of material nature. And this is where the impulsiveness, they do get confused, because they think that the Lord doesn't come in any form, does not assume any form, but that's really not very true. And what Prabhupada also mentions here is that the Lord has the ability to deliver us, and hence the only way that we can really rid ourselves from this suffering, whether it's birth, death, old age, or disease, can only come when we surrender to Krishna. And Krishna does mention in chapter 18, rather than after he has shared about all the yogas. So he tells Arjuna, give up everything and then just surrender to me. And in that surrender, you will that will be your that will help you in your journey back to Godhead. So you'll never come back to this world. You'll never go through that the pain of that hellish life after death, or birth, or old age, or disease. So Krishna consciousness is the only solution. So let's move to the last verse, which is text 13. यस्त्वत्र बद्ध इव कर्मभिरावृतात्मा भूतेन्द्रियाश्रयमयिमवलम्ब्य मायाम् आस्ते विशुद्धमविकारमखण्डबोधम् आतप्यमान हृदये वसितं नमामि. Would somebody like to read this?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, may I read?
Yes, is that Tena Mataji? Yes, go
Yes,
ahead.
Prabhuji.
Yeah.
I, the pure soul, appearing now. Oops, sorry, my phone is a bit
No
tiny.
worries.
I, the pure soul, appearing now, bound by my activities. I'm lying in the womb of my mother. Sorry, Prabhuji, my phone.
No worries. Are you able to do it now?
Yeah, it's on my phone. The screen is very small.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I, the pure soul, steering now, bound by my activities. I'm lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of my life. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him, who is also here with me. but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances. Purport. As stated in the previous verses, the Jiva, soul, says, I take shelter of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, constitutionally, the Jiva's soul is the subordinate servitor of the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead. Both the Supreme Soul and the Jiva soul are sitting in the same body, as confirmed in the Upanishads. They are sitting as friend, but one is suffering and the other is aloof from suffering. In this verse, it is said, Visudham avikaram akhanda bodham. The supersoul is always sitting apart from all contamination. The living entity is contaminated and suffering because he has a material body. But that does not mean that because the Lord is also with him, but that does not mean that because the Lord is also with him. He also has a material body. He is avikaram, changeless. He is always the same supreme, but unfortunately, the Mayavadi philosophers, because of their impure hearts, cannot understand that the supreme soul, the super soul, is different from the individual soul. It is said here, Atapyamna Hridaye Vashitam. He is in the heart of every living entity. But he can be realized only by a soul who is repentant. The individual soul becomes repentant that he forgets his constitutional position, wanted to become one with the Supreme Soul, and tried his best to lord it over material nature. He has been baffled, and therefore he is repentant. At the same time, Supersoul, or the relationship between the Supersoul and the individual soul, is realized. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, after many, many births, the knowledge comes to the conditioned soul that Vasudeva is great. He is master and he is Lord. The individual soul is the servant, and therefore he surrenders unto him. At that time, he becomes Mahatma, a great soul. Therefore, a fortunate living being who comes to this understanding, even within the womb of his mother, has his liberation assured. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Sorry, that's the baby you can hear in the background.
No worries at all. It's nice to listen to. It's very interesting. We're speaking about birth, and then we're actually experiencing that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much. So this again, one of Prabhupada's very, very beautiful purports. So there is a very important quality that he speaks about, which will come to, which is repentance. And repentance is true repentance is what is going to help us to make that transition towards going back to Godhead. So here it's the pure soul, because we are the pure soul. So when you're in the womb, you're not really affected by Maya. So you are still pure, and then you understand your constitutional position, and then you offer your obeisances unto the Lord. And there are some qualities of the Lord which is mentioned here. One is the Lord is completely unaffected and He's changeless. In the previous one, we saw that the Lord comes of His own will, and here in this particular verse, there are a few more of His transcendental qualities that are mentioned here. So let's look at quickly some of them, because I also recognize we we are already at 8:49. So here so in the previous verse, the Jiva soul says, I take full shelter of the Supreme Lord. And we so here's where it's also important to understand that we have a friend who will stay with us for life, not just this life but many lifetimes. and that is the Paramatma. So there is a supreme soul, Paramatma, and there is a Jiva soul who sit in the same body. However, both are very, very different. So one is transcendental, one is beyond the laws of nature, beyond Maya, and the other one is very much God. So one is suffering, another one is observing and just aloof from suffering. So it's like the two birds, in the tree. One bird is doing all the actions, and the other bird is just like, which is a super soul, is just watching. And so here Prabhupada says that the super soul, although they sit with you, the super soul sits with you, but they got a transcendental body. So they're changed. So the Lord is changeless, and this is again something that confuses or dilutes the Mayavadi philosophers, because they can't understand that there is a distinct. This is the Dvaita philosophy. So. Like the Lord and the individual soul can't be one and the same. They have to be different, because otherwise you can't have bhakti in the first place. You can't love anyone if you're all merged in one entity. If you lose your individuality, so that's a very important quality here. And then here the key thing is the individual soul becomes repentant, that he's forgotten his constitutional position, and this he becomes aware when he's inside the womb, and that's why he's paying his obeisances to the Lord and asking him to take him away from this particular difficult situation. And when you're truly repentant, and that's when you acquire that knowledge, and that knowledge is about what is the relationship between the super soul and the individual soul. And that's a beautiful relationship, and that's what we're really trying to nurture as bhakti. That's what we are trying to nurture through chanting, through enjoy religious pastimes. And through that knowledge, when you acquire after many, many births, you come to this knowledge that Vasudeva is great, he's the master and he's the Lord. And you understand what your position is. Our position is not as the proprietor of this particular world. Our role is not, I own this house, I have this, like bank balance, I've got these relationships. It's not about always about I. Everything has been given to us by the Lord, and we are just, like his stewards, and we're just doing our prescribed duties, and that's what will also take us closer to becoming Mahatma. And what Prabhupada says here, and that's a good lesson for all of us who might be expecting a birth in our in our family, or maybe also like a birth that has already happened. So fortunate living being who comes to this understanding, even within the womb of his mother, has his liberation assured. So what this suggests is that how can wherever there is a birth that's going to happen in a particular household, how can we create an environment? How can we create like a situation whereby the soul is able to like really come to this particular understanding even while they are in the womb. And if we can really achieve that, that is probably the greatest gift that we could give to our children, because we give a lot of gifts, material gifts to our children, which is fine. But the greatest gift that we can really give them is a gift of Krishna consciousness even before they are born. So that's really what we had for today. So just a quick sum up. So we saw in the previous verses how the embryo grows from the time that a soul enters the in the male sperm, and from the seventh month onwards its level of consciousness grows, and we have an opportunity to help uplift and elevate this particular consciousness even while the child is still in the womb, by listening to Krishna Katha, by listening to chanting. And then this is also the time when the individual soul realizes what their abominable existence is, and then they repent. They generally repent, and they pay their obeisances, and they surrender to the Lord. And that happens around the 7th month onwards, till they come. The moment they come out, they forget about it. And hence our endeavor to them will be, how can we ensure that they continue to keep remembering Krishna consciousness even when they come into this particular world? And that's how we would sum up today's verses. So do we have any questions, any reflections?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Naina Mataji. And thank you for sharing your realizations.
Thank you.
And all the best. Hopefully, your grandchild is doing well, and we pray for his soul, that he will have a lovely life.
Thank you,
A
Prabhuji.
Krishna conscious life.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your blessings. It means a lot. Thank you. Hare
Blessings from all of us, coming from all of us then.
Hare.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So we end today's class then. And Shiji Kishori Mataji, can I invite you to do the Vaishnava prayer, please?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. Thank you, as always. So let's all put our hands together. Let's pray very sincerely to their lordships. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Let's all unmute and say 3 loud Haribols to Prabhuji. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol.
Haribol.
All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna,
Thank you
Prabhuji.
so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.